Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into something pretty fundamental, a conflict that really affects billions globally. It's this deep ethical, and you could say architectural failure right at the heart of social media as we know it. We're talking about this structural clash where the platform's need to make money is directly fighting against, well, the healthy development of young people.
It really is an irreconcilable difference, isn't it? The sources we're drawing on today offer this really exhaustive technical look. They trace the systemic harm that comes directly from the architecture of surveillance capitalism, using platforms like TikTok as a prime case study. But importantly, we're not just diagnosing the problem here. The analysis also points towards what seems to be a singular architecturally sound solution. It's called the micro-social network model, or MSN. And it's specifically championed by this platform, Web4.community.
Right. So if you're involved in any discussion about digital safety's future, maybe you're a policymaker, an educator, or just a concerned parent, this deep dive is really your shortcut. We're going to lay out the specific technical mechanisms, the psychological drivers behind all those headlines about the youth mental health crisis. We're digging deeper than just content moderation. We're looking at the system itself. Okay, so let's unpack this. Before we even get to the solution part, we really need to grasp the depth of the damage here. Our sources have meticulously laid out 10 core areas, 10 ways the current setup, this surveillance capitalism model, the constant need for attention and data, profoundly hurts children and adolescents. We have to start right at the foundation, the architecture of the developing mind.
Okay, so the issue with the current global model isn't just that it's sometimes fun, right? It's that it is structurally engineered for nonstop extraction. Surveillance capitalism, that's the term for this model. Attention and data, the raw materials needed to, maximize ad revenue. And the main engine, particularly on platforms like TikTok, is the For You page, the FYP.
And that FYP architecture, psychologically, it's incredibly powerful, almost like a weapon, as you said. It uses something behavioral scientists call variable ratio reinforcement. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think addiction is, getting a reward every single time. But the sources stress this is actually much, much stronger.
Exactly, because the reward, that perfect viral video, the one that makes you laugh or gasp, it comes after an unpredictable number of scrolls. Think less like a vending machine where you put money in, get a snack out, and much more like a slot machine.
Oh. The uncertainty is the key.
Precisely. Because you never know when the next hit is coming, you develop the highest possible resistance to stopping. You just keep scrolling. Because that chance of an immediate, really satisfying reward feels like it's always just around the corner. It drives compulsive behavior.
And this loop, this variable reward system, it creates a neurochemical hijack. That constant anticipation, the hope for the next great video, it directly stimulates the nucleus accumbens. That's the brain's main pleasure and reward center, right?
That's the one. And importantly, the dopamine hit, that chemical rush, isn't really tied to watching the video itself. That might actually encourage some reflection. Instead, it's linked to the anticipation of finding it.
So the seeking is the reward.
Exactly. The system is therefore designed to keep you seeking, keep you anticipating, which means keeping you scrolling. And this sustained rapid-fire stimulation rewires the brain, basically. It gets used to constant, quick transitions.
And the fallout for the developing brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, is, it's severe. That's the part that handles executive function, right? Things like working memory, controlling impulses, staying focused.
Yes. And if the brain is constantly being rewarded for switching tasks quickly, for getting those quick dopamine hits, the neural pathways needed for deep, sustained concentration actually weaken. The sources call the resulting state continuous partial attention, or CPA.
CPA, continuous partial attention. What does that actually look like in real life?
It shows up as a loss of tolerance for anything that isn't highly stimulating. The brain gets used to this constant dopamine bath, and it really struggles with tasks that need sustained, focused effort. Things like, reading a book, writing a complex essay, even just sitting through a long class without constantly checking your phone.
So the depth of thinking just evaporates.
It declines, yeah, because the very mechanism for achieving deep focus has been structurally undermined by the platform's design.
Okay, so moving from the brain's reward system, let's talk about identity. Specifically, the pressure this puts on how kids see themselves, their appearance. Adolescence is fundamentally about identity consolidation, isn't it? figuring out who you are, where you fit, often through self-assessment and feedback from peers.
Exactly. But the environment on these global platforms, it systematically undermines that crucial process. Instead of getting, honest feedback that helps build a healthy identity, it pushes these manufactured aesthetic ideals at massive scale.
And we're not just talking about putting on virtual makeup here. The sources make it clear these filters are sophisticated AI tools. They have algorithmic bias built in, right? Promoting features seen as optimal symmetry, certain nose shapes, eye sizes.
Yes, and applying these ideal faces to millions of users at once, it sets this completely impossible standard.
Which leads to this constant comparison between the filtered, perfect version and your actual unfiltered self. The sources call this filter fatigue.
That's right. The user starts to see their own real face as somehow fundamentally flawed just because it doesn't match the instant perfection the algorithm offers.
And this isn't just vanity, is it? This constant comparison fuels a real, quantifiable mental health crisis.
Absolutely. The analysis directly links this environment to rising rates of self-harm thoughts and even clinical diagnoses like body dysmorphic disorder, BDD.
BDD, wow.
Yeah, and the most striking example mentioned is Snapchat dysmorphia.
I've heard of that. That's where people actually ask plastic surgeons.
Exactly. To make them look like they're filtered selfies. It's quite alarming.
And beyond just looks, there's this performance pressure too.
Huge pressure. To succeed in this global, non-contextual space, users feel they need multiple personas, be attractive for this trend, be super funny for that one, politically sharp for another, all at the same time, often contradicting each other.
That sounds exhausting.
It leads to intense identity fragmentation. When they put the phone down, there's this anxiety because which self is the real one? They genuinely don't know. #tag 1.3, systemic vulnerability to harmful content. Right, now here's where we see the profit motive really clashing with safety in a, frankly, chilling way. The algorithm's main job is to maximize session length, keep you watching, keep you engaged. It doesn't really care if the content is helpful or harmful.
Okay, help me understand that mechanism. If someone's struggling, showing vulnerability, why does the algorithm see that as a good thing for engagement?
Because vulnerability, especially when it's shared openly, tends to trigger two very high engagement responses: validation and support, and criticism and drama.
So both positive and negative reactions keep people hooked.
Exactly. So if a user, especially a vulnerable teen, starts interacting with mental health content, the system flags that interest, and it quickly pushes them into an intensified reinforcement loop.
Which creates something called content mutation. What's that?
It means the platform, always seeking higher engagement, rapidly shifts the user from maybe general wellness stuff towards more intense, specific, and potentially really destructive material. Things like detailed discussions of eating disorders, guides on self-harm techniques, even graphic suicide methods.
That's horrific, but the algorithm thinks it's just giving the user what they engage with most.
Precisely. The tragic irony is the system is just doing its job as designed, serving up what its calculations predict will maximize engagement, even if it's incredibly dangerous.
But surely there's moderation, content filters.
Yes, platforms invest in it, but the harmful content is often deliberately designed to evade detection. Creators use coded language, euphemisms, emojis, or they might reverse images, manipulate audio, techniques specifically designed to slip past both AI scanners and human review teams.
So the moderators are always playing catch-up, while the recommendation engine is actively finding and grouping the most vulnerable users.
That's the core problem. The result is that minors, often just looking for connection or help, become the primary accidental audience for this high-risk, unvetted material. Material the system itself selected because it drives those extreme engagement numbers. #tag 1.4, the creation of the permanent digital dossier.
Okay, data collection. It's the bedrock of surveillance capitalism, we know that. But it's way beyond just tracking likes and comments, isn't it? We're talking about building a permanent digital dossier on every single child.
Yes, the collection is pervasive, continuous, and incredibly granular. It goes far beyond what users consciously share. Platforms gather sophisticated biometric and behavioral data.
Like what, specifically?
Things like how fast you type, your scrolling speed, whether you tap or swipe more often, even how long your gaze lingers on certain parts of the screen, like someone's eyes, or maybe a product.
How can typing speed tell an AI anything meaningful about a kid?
It can infer psychological states. For instance, hesitation in typing, slower speeds, maybe erratic scrolling, that could indicate anxiety, concentration, or even distraction. This behavioral data builds up a psychological profile that's, well, it's far more detailed than anything that's ever existed before. It's a lifelong file based on behaviors from crucial developmental years.
But the biggest risk isn't just the data they have now, it's the inferred data it allows them to generate about the future.
Absolutely correct. The AI uses these deep behavioral profiles to make predictions. Inferences about, say, a user's future political views, their likelihood of certain health issues, their financial stability down the road, their probable buying habits. That's where the risk becomes truly lifelong.
Because those predictions mean other entities, corporations, political groups, maybe even governments could potentially target or manipulate that person years later, based purely on vulnerabilities or behaviors they showed when they were, say, 14.
Precisely. It's like an invisible layer of potential vulnerability baked into their future, based on childhood digital footprints, potentially irreversible. Hashtag 1.5, the viral safety deficit. Okay, this point really highlights the collision between the speed of global platforms and the much slower pace of human brain development. In teenagers, the emotional centers, the limbic system, develop much faster than the brain's braking system.
The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for impulse control and thinking through risks.
Exactly.
So emotional rewards like sudden fame from a viral video or tons of peer approval, they feel much more important, much heavier than logically assessing physical danger, which is a slower thought process.
Yes, the system structurally exploits this developmental gap.
So when some challenge or trend goes viral globally,
The sheer volume of views, the likes, the comments, it provides this overwhelming social proof. It signals that the behavior, no matter how risky it might seem initially, must be acceptable, even desirable or cool.
and that collective feeling overrides the kid's own, perhaps more cautious individual risk assessment.
Completely. It just gets drowned out by the noise and the perceived reward.
But is the platform really to blame? Isn't this just teenage risk-taking amplified? How is it different from, say, playground dares back in the day?
The difference is the speed, the scale, and that constant, immediate positive reinforcement loop. Playground dares didn't instantly reward you with potentially millions of views, monetization opportunities, and global validation from peers. The sources point to extreme examples, like the Blackout Challenge or the Benadryl Challenge. Tragically, some kids died.
Horrible.
These are textbook examples of this viral safety deficit. The platform's reward structure, prioritizing rapid virality, actively short-circuits the healthy cognitive process of assessing risk. The architecture itself prioritizes the dangerous stunt for its engagement potential over the child's actual safety. Profit over safety. Hashtag 1.6, cognitive overload and academic interference.
Right. It's clear the platform messes with focus. But let's dig into how just using the phone actively gets in the way of learning and memory.
Well, the design itself is built on interruption. Every single notification, every visual shift, every jump from one short video to the next, it forces the brain to constantly switch its attention. And each switch incurs what's called a task switching cost.
And paying that cost over and over isn't just tiring. It has actual cognitive consequences, measurable ones.
Oh, absolutely. Constant task switching leads to more errors, mental fatigue, and the sources show measurable drops in performance on tasks needing sustained thought, sort of like a drop in IQ scores for that period. Interestingly, even just having the phone nearby and visible, even if you're not using it, uses up some cognitive bandwidth because your brain is partly monitoring it for potential alerts.
And learning effectively needs two key things, right? Focused attention to actually process information deeply, and good sleep to consolidate memories.
Precisely. And this architecture inhibits both.
So the continuous partial attention, CPA, we talked about earlier, makes deep processing almost impossible.
Pretty much. The kind of focus you need to really understand, say, a complex historical event or a mathematical concept. It's very difficult to achieve. Information stays superficial, it's shallowly processed.
And then if the scrolling continues late at night.
Sleep gets disrupted, which prevents the brain from doing its essential overnight job of memory consolidation, transferring information into long-term storage.
So you don't learn properly because you can't focus, and then you don't remember it properly because you didn't sleep well. A double whammy.
Exactly. The system facilitates shallow processing across the board, really hurting academic performance and deep understanding. Hashtag 1.7 asynchronous mass scale harassment. Cyberbullying isn't new, of course, but the global social architecture completely changes its nature. It morphs from, a localized conflict into this chronic mass-scale trauma that the victim often feels they just cannot escape.
How does the platform enable that shift in the aggressor's mind? What makes people crueler online?
A key factor is digital disinhibition. Being physically distant from the victim, plus the feeling of semi-anonymity on huge platforms, lets people drop normal social restraints. They act more aggressively because there's no immediate real-world consequence. This is often coupled with moral disengagement. Abusers find ways to rationalize their cruelty. Maybe they tell themselves the victim deserved it for posting something, or they just dehumanize the person behind the screen because they don't feel real.
So when you have thousands, maybe millions, watching a video, and the comment section just explodes with negativity, that victim faces asynchronous mass-scale harassment.
That's the critical term, asynchronous and mass-scale. Traditional bullying might happen at school, but then you go home, you have some refuge. But it's a global flood of negativity coming from everywhere at all times. It creates this state of chronic, inescapable stress. The victim is dealing with maybe thousands of distant attackers whose comments live on forever, often archived, searchable. It makes it almost impossible to process that trauma using normal coping mechanisms for stress or conflict. Hashtag 1.8 exploitation via hyperconsumerism.
Okay, let's talk monetization again. It's not just about data. It's designed to directly exploit the psychology of young consumers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Linking their self-worth to buying things.
Yes, and it leans heavily on what the sources call dark patterns. Basically, designing advertising so it doesn't look like advertising. It gets embedded directly within these trusted parasocial relationships that kids form with influencers.
Parasocial, like feeling you know someone you've only ever seen online.
Exactly, that one-sided feeling of closeness. The platform blends commerce right into that relationship content, intentionally blurring the lines, deceiving young users about the commercial motive behind what they're watching.
So the platform basically uses the emotional connection the kid feels with the influencer to push products.
Precisely. And this fuels intense pester power. Because the algorithm pushes instant buying linked to whatever trend is viral right now, you need that item now to be in. It systematically undermines any sense of financial literacy.
Right.
Kids pressure their parents relentlessly for these often transient products because the platform has literally wired their brains to link self-worth and social status to immediate consumption. Hashtag 1.9 erosion of critical media literacy, the very speed of short-form content delivery. It's fundamentally at odds with developing the skills needed for, critical thinking about media and information, skills vital for civic life.
The sources say the rapid-fire format forces the brain into heuristic processing. What does that actually mean?
Heuristic processing is like taking mental shortcuts, making quick judgments based on surface-level cues, things like emotions, visuals, maybe just how confident the speaker sounds, or if the background music is catchy, rather than carefully evaluating the actual content or the source's credibility.
So it feels true, rather than is it actually true?
Basically, yes.
And the alternative is systematic processing.
Right. That's the slow, deliberate, effortful process of weighing evidence, checking sources, looking for bias, cross-referencing information.
But the platform's architecture discourages that.
It actively discourages it because systematic processing takes time and focus, and the platform wants you consuming quickly, swiping to the next thing. Speed undermines critical thought. This leaves young people incredibly vulnerable to emotionally charged misinformation or disinformation.
And then there's this effect regarding lies. The illusion of truth effect.
Ah, yes, this is crucial. Even if you initially doubt something you see online, if the algorithm keeps showing you the same narrative or similar ones over and over, the sheer repetition makes the falsehoods start to feel familiar.
And familiarity gets mistaken for truth.
Exactly. The ease with which your brain processes the now familiar statement registers as fluency, and then, critically, as factual accuracy. Even if you were skeptical at first, source credibility just gets eroded. Entertainment value and repetition become more important than truth. Hashtag 1.pez algorithmic echo chamber and civic cost.
Okay, our final impact point. This really brings it all together, highlighting the cost to society that this architecture imposes.
Yeah.
The algorithm's core drive maximizing engagement leads to build these rigid, personalized reality tunnels for each user.
Yes, the personalized filter bubble. To keep you glued to the screen, the FYP filters out out anything that might challenge your existing beliefs, introduce uncomfortable ambiguity, or trigger negative feelings that might make you look away. The result is extreme insulation, intellectual stagnation, really.
So the user basically only ever sees content and viewpoints that confirm what they already think or feel.
Pretty much. And if you scale that up, think about the bigger picture. This hyper-personalization stops young people from developing the essential ingredients for a healthy democracy. Things like exposure to shared facts, understanding common social norms, encountering diverse perspectives constructively. It actively breeds intolerance for complexity or disagreement.
And the sources conclude this leads to accelerated radicalization.
Yes, within these hyper-niche, sometimes toxic online communities, and it imposes a huge civic cost on our future society. It fosters deep cognitive rigidity and inability to process contradictory information productively, which is disastrous for democratic dialogue.
Wow. Okay, 10 points. That is a comprehensive and frankly quite damning analysis of the architectural damage. The core conflict seems undeniable now. The profit model built on surveillance capitalism requires, or at least results in, the erosion of youth mental health and potentially societal cohesion.
But here's the thing. If the problems are, at their root, structural and architectural, then the solution has to be structural and architectural too. It has to be a reversal. And the sources propose exactly that. A total rejection of the current model in favor of the microsocial network, or MSN model.
MSN, microsocial network. And it's crucial here. The sources identify Web4.community as really the leading platform, maybe the only one right now, offering this specific ethical blueprint for kids. This isn't just slapping on a safer filter, is it? It's a whole different paradigm. So what exactly is an MSN?
An MSN is designed from the ground up to be deliberately contextual and critically human scale. Think of it as a fiduciary space. A digital environment mediated by a known, trusted adult, the MSN owner for a limited group of minors. This immediately flips the power dynamic.
And that limited group size? That's the firewall against the problems we just discussed.
It's fundamental. The sources emphasize bounded scale. An intentional size cap, usually somewhere between 50 and maybe 200 members. This size ensures genuine human accountability. You know the people in the group. The governance is based on relationships. And crucially, this structure just isn't suitable for the mass-scale toxicity, the anonymous pile-ons, the viral insanity that defines the global platforms.
And it's not just about size, but also contextual alignment. The features are different.
Completely. The features aren't designed for endless, open-ended attention grabbing. They're built for specific shared goals, collaborating on a school project, planning a family reunion, coordinating a sports team schedule, maybe a book club. This eliminates the underlying need for that viral, attention-seeking performance anxiety that drives so many destructive behaviors online.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating. Web4.community seems to have specifically designed architectural features to directly counter each of the 10 harms we just spent time unpacking. Let's walk through this mitigation matrix they propose. It feels like a philosophical break from the status quo.
It really is. The whole system is built around intentionality and boundaries, the exact opposite of the limitless algorithm-driven feed.
Okay, let's start with harm #1, algorithmic addiction, driven by that variable ratio reinforcement. How does an MSN counter that?
It enforces mandatory intentionality checks, MIC. The interface isn't an infinite scroll. It's session-based, often organized like folders or channels. Users have to actively click or navigate to specific content feeds like team practice videos or project research links. It demands conscious choice.
So it breaks that addictive dopamine loop.
Exactly, by replacing mindless anticipation with deliberate navigation.
What about harm #2? Mental health comparison and filter fatigue, fueled by impossible beauty standards.
They counter that with a strict filter and metrics ban. That means absolutely no face-altering filters, which removes the source of the manufactured ideal. And maybe even more importantly, they ban all public vanity metrics. No public counts, no view counts, no follower numbers displayed.
So the focus shifts entirely.
To the actual content, the contribution, the human interaction. It removes that high-stakes pressure to perform for popularity points.
Okay, harm #3. Harmful content exposure, where the algorithm can accidentally push dangerous stuff to vulnerable kids.
The MSN structure itself prevents this. It's a walled garden with zero trust access. Content is strictly contained within the approved members of that specific MSN. There's no external sharing function, no public feeds, and critically, no algorithm recommending content based on affinity or engagement bait from outside the group.
So accidental exposure to global viral garbage becomes impossible.
Virtually impossible, yes. The community boundary is the content boundary.
Harm #4. The permanent digital dossier and the massive privacy risks of data collection and inference.
This is countered by their data minimization and fiduciary data model. They operate on what they call a functional-only data policy. They only collect the absolute minimum data needed for the MSN to actually work, login info, message history within the group, that kind of thing. And this data is explicitly never used for user profiling, ad targeting, inference, or sold to anyone, ever.
And the MSN owner acts as a guardian.
Yes, they are legally designated as the data fiduciary, directly responsible for the digital safety and data privacy of the minors in their group.
Harm #5. Dangerous challenges the viral safety deficit driven by the need for rapid, short-form content.
They address this with content format constraints. The platform architecture prioritizes things like discussion threads, shared documents, maybe longer-form video uploads relevant to the group's purpose. By deliberately slowing down the pace of consumption and making it structurally difficult to achieve that lightning-fast short-form virality, they remove the incentive for dangerous stunts like the blackout challenge to even start, let alone spread.
Harm #6. Cognitive performance decline. The continuous partial attention problem.
They tackle this through asynchronous communication and notification control. The features encourage deeper collaboration, think shared calendars, group document editing, plan discussions. And crucially, the user controls notification settings frequency, types, not the algorithm bombarding them.
So it encourages focus rather than distraction.
Exactly. It promotes deliberate systematic processing and respects the user's need for uninterrupted time instead of demanding constant vigilance.
Harm #7.
Yeah.
Cyberbullying and toxicity, especially that horrible asynchronous mass-scale harassment.
This is where the human scale is key. It relies on explicit identity and human governance. Within an MSN, identities are known. They're tied to real-world community roles, student, teammate, family member. There's no real anonymity. And the MSN owner has simple, immediate tools for moderation, like one-click removal of harmful content, or even a disruptive member.
So accountability is direct and swift.
Yes. It ensures immediate human oversight, which makes that kind of distributed, anonymous mass harassment basically impossible to sustain.
Okay, harm #8. Hyperconsumerism and exploiting kids through those dark patterns in advertising.
The solution is blunt: a zero advertising policy and commercial isolation. It's absolute. The platform strictly bans all internal advertising, any sponsored content, any affiliate links.
Wow, completely clean.
Completely. No native advertising woven into influencer relationships because there are no influencers in that commercial sense. It shields kids entirely from that manipulative commercial pressure and the resulting pester power.
Harm #9. The media literacy deficit caused by forcing that rapid heuristic processing.
The architecture pushes back by integrating source verification tools and contextual feeds. For example, when sharing information, users might be prompted or even required by the MSN owner's rules to cite a source or provide context. This controlled environment actively teaches systematic processing by making users pause, reflect, and justify claims. It directly counters that illusion of truth effect caused by mere repetition.
And finally, harm #10. The algorithmic echo chamber and the civic cost of filter bubbles leading to radicalization.
This is countered by a contextual diversity mandate. Feeds inside the MSN are organized by topic, project, or a specific shared goal, not by what an algorithm thinks you'll like based on your past clicks. The system doesn't filter based on predicted affinity. It organizes based on the group's purpose.
So you're forced to see different aspects of the group's activity.
Exactly. It actively forces exposure to diverse, goal-oriented information and discussion, which builds the cognitive flexibility needed for healthy disagreement and ultimately for democracy.
That 10-point matrix, it really is a fundamental rejection of the incentives driving almost all mainstream social media today. It's a total pivot in philosophy.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this MSN model philosophically is how it forces us to rethink digital power itself. When you design a platform around ethical rules, human boundaries, the whole question of who's in charge, digital sovereignty, it shifts completely. #3.1 decentralized governance and fiduciary responsibility.
So digital control moves away from this huge centralized global tech company, which, let's face it, can't possibly police harm effectively at that scale anyway, back to the local community leader, the MSN owner.
Precisely. Each MSN operates with autonomy under its owner, who is usually a trusted adult figure. A teacher, maybe a coach, a verified parent or guardian. They set the rules, they enforce the social contract for that specific group, they create local rules that make sense in context.
And that human judgment is better than AI moderation.
Fundamentally superior, according to the sources, because the owner relies on actual relationships, contextual understanding, the direct accountability. AI moderation misses all of that nuance.
So the MSN owner basically acts as the first line of defense right there in the digital space with the kids.
They do. They are acting as the primary fiduciary for the digital well-being of the minors in their care. That's a profound shift. The platform enables this fiduciary role, but it doesn't pretend it can replace the human element of trust and responsibility. The owner shields the kids from exploitation, from external threats, in a way these massive, anonymous, global platforms simply cannot. Now, if the architecture is the structure, the business model, that's the ethical core. And the MSN model, specifically as implemented by Web4 community, makes a clean break. It completely rejects the architecture of surveillance capitalism by refusing to make money from attention or data.
Right. So there's no free product where you are the product paid for with your data and attention. How does the platform stay afloat then?
It's funded entirely through straightforward, predictable fees. Small subscription and licensing fees paid by the organization, like a school or club, or maybe by the parents. This creates an explicit cost-for-value exchange. And that is the definition of incentive alignment.
Okay, incentive alignment. What does that actually look like day to day compared to, say, TikTok?
Well, think about it. If you look away from TikTok, the platform registers that as a financial loss. Its algorithms kick in immediately to push something hyper-stimulating to grab your attention back.
Right. Keep scrolling at all costs.
But if Web4 community is funded by a stable subscription and you decide to log off to go read a book or play outside, the platform has actually succeeded financially. Why? Because its revenue is secure and its core promise, providing a safe, focused environment, is being fulfilled. Your satisfaction and safety are its financial interest, not your addictive engagement.
And the guaranteed outcome of that model is real data protection.
Has to be. Because the user's data holds absolutely zero financial value for the platform itself. It's never sold, never used for ads, never used for creepy inferences. The entire incentive to collect vast amounts of personal information just disappears. This guarantees genuine data minimization. It's a layer of safety that the ad-based global platforms structurally cannot provide without completely destroying their own business model. Hashtag tag 3.3, the power of non-scale. Now, this usually brings up an important question, one that trips people up. How can you possibly scale a business that is explicitly designed not to seek infinite social scale? It sounds contradictory.
Yeah, it does seem like a paradox. You want the ethical safety of being small, but surely you need the efficiency of being large to survive.
It's a critical distinction the sources make. The infrastructure, the underlying software, the servers, the database tech that is designed to scale efficiently. It can support potentially millions of these small independent MSNs. That's infrastructure scalability. That's how they manage costs and ensure the platform is reliable.
Okay, so the tech scales. But the social layer deliberately stays small.
Exactly. The social layer maintains community non-scalability. That maximum MSN size is intentionally capped at that human manageable level, 50, 100, maybe 200 members. This ensures that the crucial human elements, trust, familiarity, direct relationship-based moderation, are always preserved. This principled commitment to not scaling the social interactions is, in fact, the core defense mechanism against all the viral toxicity and algorithmic manipulation that plague the global models. They scale the technology, yes, but not the potential for relational harm.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for us, for you listening? Well, the systemic harms we've detailed, the addiction by design, the identity issues, the toxicity, the data risk, they are just unfortunate side effects of today's big social media platforms. They seem to be direct, even necessary outcomes of how those platforms make money. The conflict between maximizing corporate profit and protecting young people's development looks fundamentally irreconcilable within that surveillance capitalism model.
And the sources present this micro-social network model, particularly as built by Web4 community, as a really compelling, architecturally sound, and ethically coherent alternative. A blueprint, really. By completely flipping the incentives funding through subscriptions, not ads, decentralizing governance to trusted human fiduciaries, the entire focus shifts. It moves away from exploiting attention toward enabling genuine, intentional connection and collaboration within safe, known, human-scale groups.
So the final recommendation, really for you parents, educators, policymakers listening, seems clear from this analysis. Championing and maybe investing in the transition towards MSN platforms like Web4 community isn't just presented as one option among many. It's framed as perhaps the only viable path right now towards achieving a genuinely ethical digital environment for the next generation.
And this whole analysis strongly suggests a path forward through regulatory advocacy. So Here's the provocative thought to leave you with. What if policymakers globally really took this connection seriously? The direct link between architectural incentives and